Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
As I studied John 3, I ran into one commentator who said that this was the greatest sermon ever preached, and it wasn't in the temple or even on a hillside to the multitudes. It was to one man who didn't understand most of what he was talking about at the time. But you know what? I think Nicodemus must have gone home and written down what Jesus had told him, meditated over it, and compared it with what the Old Testament scriptures said. He knew what Jesus told him was incredibly important because he was revealing the plan of salvation, how to get into God's kingdom. And unlike other Pharisees, that was uppermost in Nicodemus's mind. Jesus disclosed some life-changing truths. The one we're looking at today started with verily, verily, or most assuredly, which always tells us something important is coming up. Jesus said, "Most assuredly I say to you, we speak what we know and testify to what we have seen, and you do not receive our witness. If I have told you earthly things and you do not believe, how will you believe if I tell you heavenly things? No one has ascended to heaven but he who came down from heaven, that is, the Son of Man." When he said we speak, we know, we have seen, who's he talking about? He could be referring to himself and John the Baptist, since the Pharisees hadn't accepted John the Baptist either. Or he could have been talking about the prophets, since they had testified to him too. Or he could have been speaking about himself along with the Father and the Holy Spirit. He says the Jewish rulers had already decided not to believe his witness. After all, as Nicodemus had testified, they knew he was from God because of his miracles. But Nicodemus was the only one who came to learn more. And he sure did learn more. Jesus realized that Nicodemus wasn't getting everything, but he kept sharing these life-changing truths. He made sure Nicodemus knew who he was talking to. Listen to that last verse that I read. No one has ascended to heaven but he who came down from heaven, that is, the Son of Man. Several times it said people marveled at the authority with which Jesus taught. Of course he taught with authority. He was the authority. In fact, he alone had perfect knowledge of the kingdom of heaven, because he had been there. And he was the only one qualified to discuss salvation. It was his plan. He was declaring his deity to Nicodemus. No human except Jesus had been to heaven and knew God through personal experience of actually being God. So Nicodemus had better pay attention whether or not he understood every detail. I feel like that sometimes. A spiritual concept feels like it's just out of reach, but I know it's important to not just understand it, but to be able to apply it to my life. So I wrestle with it, break it down, pray over it, study it, whatever I need to do to get it. I feel quite sure Nicodemus did this with what Jesus said that night, or we wouldn't have the details of the conversation recorded decades later. Is there anything that you've read in the Word that you haven't understood? Don't just skim over it. Wrestle with it. Pray over it. Let Jesus change your heart with its truths like he did Nicodemus that night so long ago.
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through His Word. You can listen to other episodes on our website, which you can find in the description below. Thank you for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.